Chapter 28 At Pyros Iternas, the Eternal Flame. Circled by the expansive Uman and the shadow-casting nimbus that swirls atop it, fitted as a crown, a cylinder of stone and sand, coral and shell, precious gems and metals stands tall. A plateau of wondrous heights shining and glistening in the center of perilous waters and under a morbid and turbulent sky. The utter starkness of this contrast, I will describe again so that I may verify to myself this incredible polarity, is that of an opalescent tower beneath the overcast heavens, and it awes me with an uncanny sense of beauty. This contrast colors the sea mark with a compelling and undeniable magnetism. This worldly structure seems to have within it each and every sort of stone, metal, and gem known to Oma. There is nowhere to dock, no shore, and no ascending slants. There are only slippery creases and questionable footholds to brave. Below, lapping this outrightly misplaced spire, I can sense many unknown predators, hungrily awaiting for our attempt in scaling the natural citadel, so that they may capitalize on our failure ought we slip and fall. "You're positive that you do not wish to fly?" I raise an eyebrow to Saba, it acting as a pulley for my concern.
"Fish I can kill, but whatsoever is up there, if anything at all, has yet to be documented. Those that have arrived here have never returned, nor has their word regarding any mysteries within the Scorch Zone been delivered."
Tomas' savageness aside, he can be very conscientious in his decision-making. An abrupt turbulence of the sea reveals to us its mercurial temper. Swinging moods of the Uman are flagrant and sudden. She is as a quaint Omana, lashing out when her need for attention is not met and growing indifferent were she to receive it in surplus. I engage my Drakeen form, not for the convenience of flight, but rather for the grip of the scales. The polished stones of the island are damp and sleek. Each leg up presents the threat and opportunity of peril. Each gander downward reminds of the demise that awaits. Saba has developed a far more accessible method of scaling. He simply shapes his ascent into the massive structure, one stair-step, nook, and cavity at a time. The waves, growing in their fury as we progress, crash against those segments of the tower which we've already suffered, slamming it with such ferocity that even after a kalama of conquest, our backs yet meet the Uman's frigid moisture. By whatsoever miraculous doings, Sa is uninterrupted here. Atop the lonely and lavishly dressed spire, and at the completion of our climb. Despite the surrounding storm and Tiamatu's presence barricading it elsewhere, the longed-for Sa shines brightly and vertically over this scorch zone. That solid beam of wistful light remains incomprehensibly undisturbed in this place, a marvel that was flawlessly obscured from us at the base and foundation of the towering island. The heat is intense, the air dry, and what lies before us affords little rationale. In the center of the monumental island stands the grandest mushroom I have ever beheld, exceeding by many magnitudes the magnificent caps sprouting and thriving upon the bark of the mother tree. It is translucent, refracting, and glowing with vibrant bristles across every bit of its surface. Below it are two smaller fruiting bodies of the same strain. On this staggering rock, only beneath these fungi does any vegetation grow. Atop the principal shroom, there is a sleeping beast, basking on its belly, selfishly soaking in Sa's magnificence. Another species I have yet to feast my eyes upon before now. It is broad with thick fur, a great mane of fire, and cued by the breadth of its bust, it appears to be a bipedal, although it could just as feasibly behave as quadruped. Those parts of its uncovered skin are dark red, with the lively features resembling volcanic craters webbed across it. Cracks of glowing magma form an electric lattice which shatters across as sprawling veins about its resting pupils. Its mouth is disproportionately large compared to those flame-capped and fire-lashed eyes. From the corners of its lips, mighty blackened tusks curve outwardly, and at its hind is a flowing tail, its end lit like a torch. Judging from the angle by which we observe it, the creature seems extremely top-heavy with muscular arms and expansive shoulders, yet one can discern from the compactness of its hind legs and, as evidenced by those hooves that only occur at these rear limbs, that this beast can both climb with exceptionalism and also traverse a flat plain competently. Its chest protrudes pridefully, even whilst the creature slumbers. "Saba, have you ever seen anything like this before?" I look to him.
Never.
He stares in disbelief, squinting to focus, rubbing his eyes in an effort to reorient them, and sliding down with that very hand to stroke his beard in a slow contemplation. I begin to proceed forwards, but thereafter am instantly yanked backwards by Saba.
Bide your time, En. I believe the source of this heat is either the mushroom or the beast it hosts.
I am taken aback that he chose to call me by my name at this moment. I have already put that much together. What is your quarrel? I respond.
I will show you.
He levitates a small stone and launches it toward the center of the plateau. Before it could conquer even a modest fraction of the distance to the mushroom, the stone disintegrates from the exponentially compounding heat that the strange fungi, or the creature, is emitting. It is peculiar that the plants in the center are not affected. Perhaps they are of a genus that thrives in extreme temperatures such as these. They would make for fine and tough fibers in clothing or rope. I ought to be able to close the gap in the second stage of my Drakeen form. Once I center in, I'll figure out how precisely to combat the caliphation. I announce this as I progress to stage 2. Tch! Shaking his head, Saba is quick to show his discontent with my plan. He thrusts both of his legs into the ground and begins to compact pieces of the island into an armor around him. "You've mastered that trick rather quickly," I compliment him.
We do not all have the entitlement and benefit of relying on powerful artifacts to make do. By contrast, I must work harder than any Omani or Tamas to realize my wishes, and see to it that they are brought to their deserved fruition.
Does he insinuate that I have not earned any of this power? Is that envy I smell on you, Saba? Nevertheless, this is a vexation and consequence of little matter. I did not ask for these artifacts nor these abilities. Regardless, we have not the expediency to bicker. Thus I shall waive my challenging his statement. He has jabbed at my pride, though I shall do little more than shrug it loose. We begin our march toward the center, I with my scales and he with his oar. 10 or so amma forth, and the heat is already a great measure hotter. At 100 amma, the fringe of my scales begin incessantly pulsating. Saba's armor starts to crack. At 500 amma, I can now hear the feverish blaze as it whistles past me. The whole of my body swelters, soon to overheat into a swoon. Saba is consistently having to replace fragments of his melting shell. It is as though the material composition of the island is denser and more resistant to the heat when left in its solidaristic wholeness, but when separated from its hulking mass, pales in comparison. At long last, after 2 treacherous kalama of our gradual slog, the giant mushroom stands an amma's length from reach. What now? The heat is making me delirious.
Let's rip this thing to shreds. Clearly it is the source of this infernal temperature.
The very instant that Saba lays a single pressing finger against the mushroom, I detect that the beast atop has awoken by the sounding of a strident snort. It comes plummeting to the base, landing squarely before us as we spring backwards to avoid its meteoric impact. Upon closer inspection, its immense size is made dauntingly apparent.
You've achieved quite the feat, travelers. More often than not, I am burdened to come out to my intruders, am I to devour them. But you've so graciously arrived at the doorstep of my secluded abode. I extend my gratitude for such a courtesy.
It paces back and forth, prowling on all 4 but leaning into his arms for the bulk of the toil. The way its shoulders fall and rise, flaunting its chiseled structure with each step of its creep, makes for a potent tactic of intimidation. Furthermore, and additionally unsettling, is that this thing speaks, yet its mouth does not move. "Why kill us? For what reason? We are here for the sake of all," I reply. The beast calms and pauses for thought. It is intrigued by what I speak.
How can such little beings proclaim that they can defend my sake?
The beast postures itself, rising on its hind hooves, pounding its chest with its mighty paw-like hands, and roaring with a barbarity that only a fool who was both blind and deaf would dare challenge. There is a substantial evil, a common enemy of all of Oma, who threatens its existence. If we are to survive him, I must find something. The map I have tells me that this something is here, I explain. The beast's eyes spring wide and its nostrils flare and sink.
Pyros!
The beast inquires of my ancestor. It scours my form, swaying its dome from left to right between its perking shoulders, its pupils frolicking high and low. You know him! I burst, eager and enthused.
You must remember me. I can smell him on you. You are him.
The beast grows frantic, but in an excited and cheerful manner, not a worried, defensive, or fearful one. Its tail whips side to side, and its eyes grow brighter by the second. The beast, exuding his elation, is more riled than I am. Please, tell me what you know of Pyros. I falter before I can continue. I am sorry. This heat has become too much to bear. The exceedingly high temperature has begun to exact the brink of its toll, indebting my thought and speech. Any longer and I'll fall delirious. I would never have imagined the air of a scorch zone being hotter than even the greatest of Denai's output. With a considerable haste, the beast extinguishes the flames churning inside of him and inhales much of the heat about us. This brings the temperature down to a tolerable degree. Such control of the element of fire! The vigor of its flames is tamed with an excellent finesse and an undeniable mastery. So, you are the source of the heat, I say.
I am Pyros Iternas, the eternal flame as dubbed by my creator and anointed by Pyros himself as the sentry and steed of his great travels. I am tasked to forever defend his key.
He pounds his chest once more in a show of his exceptional pride for his seminal duty. You have the key, then! I knew it! Saba, we were right! Pyros reorients his demeanor, showing us a more solemn temperament.
You mustn't conclude that I shall simply hand over possession of the key.
Pyros scowls at us. Saba tightens up and the rubble around us elevates.
Do not be so anxious to perish. I could strip you clean of that dirt and clay that you call armor, drain your blood after I had boiled it from the outside, and then grind the marrow from your bones into a spice for my next tamas stew.
Pyros roars at Samba's attempts to intimidate it. Saba, however, is undeterred. Saba, I know you are well past the point of mere irritability with me, but I urge you to accede with my asking that you refrain from anything that would lead to conflict here. We lock eyes with one another without blinking nor changing expression. By no signal other than the lowering of his guard, I see that he is willing to swallow his dignity for the time being. Several times now I have asked him for such patience. I hope that he will continue to honor my requests. I redirect my attention back to Pyros. What would it take for you to part with it? It is crucial that I leave here with that key, I insist.
Pyros left clear instructions and an immutable order for me to guard the key until his reincarnate came to claim it, though he never mentioned you'd arrive with a companion. This was to be a warrior's journey, a lone wolf's pilgrimage, an odyssey of solitude. Excuse my suspicion, but it has only heightened since your accomplice postured for battle.
Pyros' magma begins to glow once more, and the air around him refracts into visible dancing heat waves. Am I to be riddled with obstacles until the very end? I grow tired of the accusations, interference, and interruptions. I cannot show my discontent, however. As painstakingly bothersome as this is, I have to remain in Pyros' good graces and not stumble between it and its fury. I required his aid. I could not have made it this far on my own. Saba has saved my life on multiple occasions during this journey. I am certainly not the apex of Omani as Pyros was. Pyros looks me up and down in an appalled pity.
Weakling. I cannot accept that my master resides in you, no matter how distinct his smell emanates from your being.
I shall not let this thing insult me any longer. I will not. Pyros wouldn't. I will fight you for it.
Will your friend be dying with you then?
Pyros tilts its head in unison with his inquiry. I throw my arm as a barring gate in front of Saba, halting his readied and fervid advance. There will be no dying, only the disciplining of my pet. Subjecting it to a level beneath even a servant by claiming my true heritage as Pyros' incarnate bolsters Pyros' ire. From the coiled and springing prowess of its legs the beast vaults itself high into the air.